The moment I was born, my mother carved my bones and peeled my skin, turning me into a porcelain girl. Yet I didn't die. Instead, I grew more graceful, alluring, and captivating each day. The men in the village eagerly awaited my maturity, for my mother planned to auction off my first night. They yearned for that exclusive right, but what they truly awaited was death in the afterlife. My mother was the most skilled woman in the village. The porcelain dolls crafted by her hands were exquisite, unparalleled masterpieces. A porcelain doll, as they were called, involved a special technique, carving the bones of a newborn girl, leaving only a thin layer of flesh and skin. If the child's face wasn't beautiful, a silver knife would be used to engrave lifelike patterns onto their delicate skin. To preserve their form, countless layers of glaze were continuously brushed onto their bodies. Once the infant's form became completely rigid and the glaze solidified, a perfect porcelain doll was born. Porcelain dolls were rare treasures. The wealthy elite vied with each other, flocking to our village to purchase them. The first porcelain doll my mother created was my elder sister. The moment she was completed, she was bought for such a high price that the entire village was consumed with envy. But when my mother performed this secret art on me, something extraordinary happened. I, the child transformed into a porcelain doll, not only survived but grew more elegant, alluring, and captivating with each passing day. The pristine white glaze seemed to permeate my body, absorbed by my skin, making it as white as snow, my bones as light as air. As I matured, the men of the village couldn't help but fix their gazes upon me. They would occasionally taunt, "Neighbor, your daughter will surely grow into a great beauty. Look at those eyebrows, those eyes, how exquisite. Tusk, it's just that she's still too young now. The places that need to grow haven't grown yet." Uncle Frank, our neighbor, slithered onto the fence, his face full of lewdness, and chuckled, "Just wait until she's fully developed. Who knows what intoxicating allure she'll possess." Haha, ever since then, the men in the village eagerly wished for my swift maturity, because my mother had spread the word that she would openly auction off my first night to the highest bidder. Every time their eyes fell upon my body, they were filled with lust and desire. "Oh, isn't that little beauty lie? That swaying waist, does she already long for a man? Tell your mother to auction her off soon." I walked home from the riverside, carrying a basin of clothes, the jeers of the men following me all the way. It wasn't until Aunt Clara embraced me, fiercely yelling at the men, get out, go home and look at your own wives." Aunt Clara was a famously fierce widow in the village. No one dared to cross her. Her husband died young, and less than 2 years later, her son succumbed to illness. Her solitary life was incredibly difficult. In this entire village, only Aunt Clara treated me like a normal girl. "Have you heard? Today, Mrs. Ngo wants to set up the altar to create a porcelain doll too. They probably just saw how beautifully you grew up, thinking even if it doesn't become a perfect doll, they might still sell it for a good price later." Aunt Clara pulled me towards the Ngo family's house. As soon as we reached their courtyard, I saw a dense crowd gathered, watching the spectacle. Mrs. Ngo held her newborn baby, her face full of anticipation, standing before the altar. My mother, wearing a string of vibrant red beads around her neck, stood beside her, directing the arrangement of objects. "See, your mother herself is here. Today will surely be a success." I didn't reply to Aunt Clara, just silently stared at every action on the altar. Ever since my mother transformed my sister into a porcelain doll and sold her for a high price, the villagers had repeatedly begged my mother to teach them this secret art, but she wouldn't easily reveal her abilities. It seemed Mrs. Ngo had paid a significant sum this time for her success. As the midday sun reached its zenith, a loud cry suddenly echoed from the altar. "The hour has come. Sacrifice the girl, make her porcelain." My mother took the infant girl from Mrs. Ngo's arms. She held an ancient iron hammer, maliciously aiming directly at the baby on the altar. The next second, a heart-wrenching wail pierced the scorching sunlight. The first step in creating a porcelain doll was to break every inch of the baby's tendons and bones. Immediately after, under the watchful eyes of everyone, my mother used a long, sharp pair of pliers, plunging them deep into the baby's navel. The pliers twisted and stirred inside the tiny body until every shattered bone fragment was separated. Only then did she stop her gruesome work. Seeing the baby almost cry herself breathless, my mother hastily called out to Mrs. Ngo beside her. "Quick, pour the medicine into her mouth." This was the most crucial step in crafting a porcelain doll. If the baby died at this point, the form couldn't be achieved. Therefore, they relied on the secret medicine in my mother's hands to sustain life. 2 spoonfuls of medicine were poured down, and the baby's cries gradually grew louder again. Everyone below the altar watched as if it were a magnificent performance, applauding continuously. I wondered if all those years ago, when my mother turned me into a porcelain doll, it had been just like this. As I thought this, a few familiar scenes flashed through my mind. My mother's sinister, feigned smile, a gleaming silver knife, and the unbearable, bone-deep pain that had once coursed through my body. I shuddered, shook my head, and looked back at the altar. When all the baby girl's flesh and skin had been intricately carved with delicate patterns, a triumphant gleam finally appeared on my mother's face. The flesh is formed, now for the glaze and color. Just as everyone believed this porcelain doll would surely be a success, suddenly, dark clouds gathered overhead, obscuring the brilliant sun. A fierce wind whipped up violently around the altar, carrying golden sand that stung my mother's eyes. The red beads on her chest glowed with an eerie light. The villagers, witnessing this strange omen, were bewildered, unsure what to do. They only heard my mother close her eyes at the altar, sighing, "It's ruined. Golden sand shrouding the sky, disaster is upon us." Everyone present felt their legs turn to jelly at her words, but very quickly the sky cleared again as if nothing had happened. Mrs. Ngo, beside herself with impatience, urged, "Mrs. Lai, quick, glaze the baby. If we miss the time, the form won't be good anymore." My mother shook her head, stepped down from the altar, and mumbled to herself, "This method cannot be used today. We will be punished by heaven." No matter how much Mrs. Ngo pleaded, my mother didn't turn back, hurrying away. How could she give up when the porcelain doll was almost complete? I heard someone from out of town came with a wad of cash a few days ago, wanting to pre-order one. Mrs. Ngo gritted her teeth, took a mud brick, and placed it on the baby girl's belly. Then, she painstakingly used long nails to fasten the baby's tiny limbs to the brick. After layers of pure white glaze and shimmering gold powder were meticulously brushed on, a porcelain doll clutching a gold brick was finally finished. Mrs. Ngo happily told the villagers, "This time, the wealthy patrons will surely be satisfied. Just wait for it to dry for 49 days, then it's ready for delivery." The noisy crowd gradually dispersed, but before leaving, a few men didn't forget to harass me. Uncle Frank touched my arm, clicking his tongue softly. "Those rich folks only know how to buy dead objects to display. How would they know our village has a living porcelain girl, so soft and lovely?" His voice grew lower and lower, interspersed with coarse, heavy breathing. Just as I wanted to turn and seek Aunt Clara's help, I saw a woman standing behind me, her eyebrows raised, eyes wide with anger. My mother had returned. She shoved Uncle Frank away, scolding him in a shrill voice, "Don't you see how many coins you have in your purse? If you have this much energy, go make some money." My mother dragged me straight home. "You little girl, I've raised you for so many years, precisely waiting to sell your first night for a good price. I'm telling you, stay away from these men from now on. If you dare lose your virginity before the auction, see if I don't beat you to death." Outwardly, I obediently nodded, but in truth, I had heard these words countless times. I dared say even the big yellow dog in the village knew that my mother only wanted to sell me for a good price. But my mind wasn't on that. Earlier, when the porcelain doll was finished, the villagers were all busy praising and chatting. I took advantage of no one paying attention, stealthily approaching the baby girl. Sure enough, I heard a few strong heartbeats. Thump, 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 thump. The baby was still alive, just like me. As soon as I arrived home, my mother dragged me into the underground secret chamber. Every time I came here, my body couldn't help but tremble with fear. I took off my clothes, allowing my mother to brush the glaze onto me. Every day, my mother did this, glazing my entire body once. Each thin layer of glaze was absorbed the moment it touched my skin. After my mother finished, my skin became even whiter and smoother, and my whole body seemed to emanate a pure, translucent holy light. She stared at my body with satisfaction, as if admiring a work of art, constantly uttering praises. I never imagined a living porcelain doll could be this beautiful. It's a pity your sister didn't have this blessing. At the auction, you will surely fetch an excellent price. After she had finished admiring me, she left me to tidy up the tools. I silently dressed, looking at the ancient talismans on the walls around the secret chamber, feeling a little afraid. Just as I bowed my head, hastily tidying up the clutter, a rustling sound suddenly came from behind. I turned my head to look, but there was no sound behind me anymore. The dark underground chamber was filled with an unpleasant, musty smell. Suddenly, that sound echoed again. Following the sound, I unexpectedly discovered a small door behind a curtain in the secret chamber. This door seemed to have not been opened for a very long time. The doorknob was covered in dust. I stealthily pressed my ear to the crack in the door, clearly hearing the sound coming from within. My mother had never mentioned the existence of this door. What was hidden inside this door? I gathered all my courage and placed my hand on the doorknob. Just as I was about to push it open, my mother's voice called from upstairs. "Lucky, what are you doing lingering? Hurry up and come out." My body trembled, I quickly let go and rushed out. But the sound lingered in my mind, refusing to be dismissed. I wondered what other secrets my mother's secret chamber held. In the middle of the night, as I slept soundly, the sound I had heard during the day echoed in my ears again. I tossed and turned in bed. Even with the blanket pulled over my head, I could still hear it. After a period of sleeplessness, I stealthily made my way to the underground secret chamber once more. The closer I got to that door, the more my body uncontrollably trembled, as if something was drawing me. Finally, I pushed open the small, dilapidated door. To my horror, the source of the sound was a pile of shattered white bones. Each white bone fragment moved rapidly across the ground, seemingly possessing its own will, attempting to reassemble into a skeleton. I picked up a white bone fragment. The fracture on it looked old. For some reason, my heart felt as if someone was clutching it tightly, a ripping pain tearing through me. It seemed the owner of these white bones shared an immense connection with me, and tears silently fell. The moment my tears dropped onto the pile of white bones, something strange happened. The fracture on the bone seemed to mend itself. It slipped from my hand, connecting with the bones on the ground, restoring itself to its original state, with no signs of abnormality left. This sight of shattered bones I had seen it before. They were the very bone fragments removed during the creation of Mrs. Ngo's porcelain doll on the altar. And in my own home, besides myself, only one other person had been turned into a porcelain doll, my elder sister. I embraced my sister's shattered bones, sitting in silence in the secret chamber for a very long time, until a faint light began to glow from the entrance. Only then did I carefully close the door and leave. Just as dawn broke, someone knocked on our door. "Who's here so early in the morning, child? Go see quickly," my mother called from her room. I answered and hurried to the courtyard. Since my father died, visitors were rare, let alone so early. "Who is it? Come on in, come on in." As soon as I pulled open the door, I saw several village women carrying various items. One held an old hen, another carried cuts of meat. "Where's your mother?" one of them asked, smiling. I pointed inside the house. Without waiting for my reply, they squeezed past me and entered. Inside the main house, as I poured them water, I vaguely overheard words like porcelain doll. My mother sat upright on a chair, looking at the things they brought, contemptuously pursing her lips. "Do you know how much a porcelain doll can sell for? You bring a few paltry items like this and expect to learn my family's secret art. Go home, all of you." The others looked at each other. One woman chuckled. "Mrs. Lai, we know this method is precious. Of course, we didn't just bring these things." With that, she pulled out a stack of money from her purse and handed it to my mother. The others, too, successively pulled out their savings. My mother delightedly counted the money, finally agreeing to speak. The women left with expressions of joy, as if they had stumbled upon a fortune. As I saw them off, before I could even close the door, I saw a figure running frantically from afar. Mrs. Ngo, breathless, waved and called to me, something's happened, quickly get your mother." When my mother was brought to the Ngo household, even I could sense the eerie atmosphere within their home. As we stepped into the courtyard, we saw it covered in shattered porcelain fragments. "Mrs. Lai, I woke up this morning to find all the plates, bowls, everything porcelain in the house, smashed to pieces, scattered all over the courtyard. Don't you think this is a bit ominous?" "We didn't hear a single sound last night," my mother said coldly, her face displeased. "I told you that day, golden sand obscuring the sky brings disaster. You deliberately continued to make porcelain dolls. Who is there to blame?" At this moment, Mr. Ngo limped out of the house. He cried, "Last night I dreamed of a soft, bloody baby ripping at my throat. If it weren't for needing money to treat my grandson, we wouldn't have done this. Please, Mrs. Lai, help us find a solution." Mrs. Ngo muttered beside him, "We gave you money many times at first. You have to handle this." My mother heard this, rolled her eyes, and said unhappily, "The porcelain doll hasn't been delivered yet, right? Let's go see." Mr. Ngo immediately perked up. He leaned on his cane and quickly walked towards a room in the courtyard. Not delivered, not delivered. You said at first that it needed to dry for 49 days, so it's still at my house. They had placed the finished porcelain doll in a damp storage room, covered with a red cloth. The moment my mother saw it, she was furious. Who told you to place it like this? Didn't I tell you? Porcelain dolls belong to the yin element. They must be placed in a well-ventilated, well-lit area. Mrs. Ngo stammered in response. Our family was truly terrified seeing it. No one usually comes here, so we thought it would be fine to leave it for a while. Porcelain dolls belong to the yin element. My mother was not wrong. Even I, standing in this damp room, felt my entire body relax. You have caused a great disaster. My mother snatched away the red cloth covering the porcelain doll, and everyone in the room recoiled a few steps in fright. What is this? The porcelain doll, which was as white as snow yesterday, had completely transformed. 2 lines of bloody tears streamed from her eyes, dripping directly onto the golden brick she clutched. This is a revenant porcelain doll. You're on your own. With that, my mother turned to leave. Mrs. Ngo, scared out of her wits, clung to my mother's thigh. Mrs. Lai, you can't leave. You have to save us no matter what. Don't worry, as long as you make this porcelain doll stop causing trouble, any amount of money is negotiable. My mother heard this, and a faint glint flickered in her eyes. She pulled out a few yellow talismans from her tight-fitting clothes and asked the Ngo family for some glutinous rice and yellow wine. She pressed the talismans onto the porcelain doll's 7 orifices. With the 7 orifices sealed, even if her spirit returns, she will be blind and deaf, unable to cause any trouble. Remember this. Absolutely do not let these talismans fall off, or I won't be able to save you. The Ngo family fearfully retreated into the courtyard, continuously thanking my mother, hurriedly handing her a stack of red money. Mr. Ngo, seizing the moment when no one was looking, secretly pinched my waist, his cloudy eyes filled with lust. The very moment the door closed, I thought I saw the porcelain doll's hand move. The baby pulled her hand away from the golden brick, transforming it into a clicking pair of scissors, and a piece of the talisman was snipped off. Ever since my mother passed on the secret art of porcelain dolls to the villagers, every household with a daughter became busy with the craft. Do you know how much a porcelain doll can sell for now? My son went to the city and found out. The rich are willing to pay this price. Saying this, a woman in the village excitedly threw her hands up. The young pregnant wife beside her asked in astonishment, "Is that really so much money? That's almost equal to several years of harvest." She stroked her belly, calculating, "If my baby is a girl, I'll turn her into a porcelain doll when she's born. Who knows, it might make us rich." I sat beside them, peeling corn, listening to these words, feeling a sense of irritation. Without realizing it, Aunt Clara had come to my side. She said angrily, "The people in our village have been driven mad by your mother. All they see is money, not even their own flesh and blood matters." My hands didn't stop working. I just replied with an emotionless face, "Their own flesh and blood isn't worth money in their hearts." Aunt Clara sighed heavily. She looked at me worriedly. "You're almost grown up, too. You need to plan for yourself. Are you really going to let your mother auction you off? None of the men in this village are decent." My movements paused. That's right, in half a month I would be an adult. The men in the village were all eagerly awaiting that day. I looked at the mountains surrounding the village, silently calculating in my heart. Just as I was deep in thought, an argument erupted nearby. It was Aunt Clara and a group of village women bickering. This stinky old widow, coming here to point fingers at us, pretending to be a good person, she probably wants to make porcelain dolls for money but can't bear children, so she's just restless here. The young pregnant wife didn't get up, but her tongue was sharp. Seeing that these words struck a raw nerve with Aunt Clara, I quickly pulled her away. On the way home, Aunt Clara gnashed her teeth and cursed. "These immoral people, treating their own children like this, they'll get their comeuppance sooner or later." I truly wish all the children in the village would run away through the small path behind the mountains and not stay in this filthy place any longer. From then on, she didn't speak much to those people anymore, only coldly observing the villagers' increasingly greedy and frantic actions. Every few months, another baby girl was transformed into a porcelain doll on the village altar. The piercing screams echoed endlessly through this isolated mountain village. The baby's parents stood beside the altar, their mouths stretched in grins from ear to ear. Such days didn't last long. Our village began to experience strange occurrences. Early in the morning, rumors had spread throughout the village. Mrs. Ngo's porcelain doll had vanished without a trace. Her entire family searched the village, but no sign of the porcelain doll was found. Mr. Ngo sat on the ground, weeping. How can it be missing? My grandson is waiting for life-saving money. The villagers nearby, enjoying the spectacle, laughed. It's not just for your grandson, old lecher. Weren't you saving money to buy the first night of the living porcelain girl? Enraged, Mr. Ngo took off his shoe and threw it at the man. And after that porcelain doll disappeared, our village began to frequently experience eerie events. In the ditch behind the village, countless dead fish floated, their putrid stench spreading to every corner of the village. Outsiders had to cover their noses, complaining endlessly. Our village's rice fields withered and turned yellow overnight, and birds flying in the sky dropped down, one after another, dead on the muddy ground. Strangely, I could always glimpse the ethereal figure of Mrs. Ngo's porcelain doll flitting through these places. This year's harvest was completely lost. Many villagers began to panic. They disregarded everything, placing all their hopes on the porcelain dolls. There were even some girls, already 5 or 6 years old, who were pressed onto the altar by their relatives, still alive, to be transformed into porcelain dolls. The lingering stench that wouldn't dissipate for days came not only from dead fish and rotting shrimp, but also from the fresh blood seeping from the altar. Finally, some of the elderly villagers could no longer bear it. They felt constant fear due to the recent strange phenomena. At this moment, someone suddenly remembered my mother. That day, Mrs. Lai said, "Golden sand shrouding the sky brings disaster." Could this be related? A single word stirred 1,000 waves. The villagers sought out my mother to see if there was a solution. After all, the harvest had failed, and all the birds and fish were dead. No matter how you looked at it, these were not good omens. My mother clutched her red bead necklace, glancing at the villagers with cold eyes. "I told you long ago, this is the consequence of defying the heavens. However, there is a way to appease the sky's wrath." Hearing this, and seeing my mother not continue, everyone understood her implication. They gathered a considerable amount of money, all of it shoved into my mother's lap. The porcelain dolls we made still need a few more days before they can be delivered and sold. But these strange happenings in the village make it impossible to endure another day. My mother saw this, and a smile slowly bloomed on her face. "Just bring all the porcelain dolls in the village here, and I will perform a blessing ceremony for the village." The villagers heard this and finally felt relieved. But every time I thought of Mrs. Ngo's vanished porcelain doll, I couldn't help but wonder if all of this was truly the wrath of heaven or the resentment of human hearts. I remembered my elder sister, who was also a porcelain doll. The last time I saw her bone fragments, they seemed to be reassembling. So, in the middle of the night, I returned to the underground secret chamber in our house. When I opened that small door, the sight before me was somewhat astonishing. In just a short time, my sister's shattered bone fragments had almost completely reassembled. I picked up the last remaining fragments on the ground, bit hard into my tongue, and let blood, mixed with tears, gently drip onto them. Sure enough, the nourished bone fragments quickly returned to their places, combining. My sister's skeleton was finally complete. I lifted her from the ground, gently placed my hands on her bones, stroking them repeatedly. That year, my sister, just like me, was transformed into a porcelain doll, and that same excruciating, bone-deep pain had also been inflicted upon her. At that very moment, my sister's skeleton suddenly moved. I recoiled 2 steps in fright, watching her leap from my embrace onto the ground. Step by step, she walked towards the door. I followed her from the underground chamber into the courtyard. On the small path in the village at midnight, only tree branches rustled, swayed by the wind. The pale moonlight cast our elongated shadows, one after another. I followed my sister directly to the Ngo family's door. She paused before the door for a moment, as if confirming something, then directly leaped into the courtyard. Was she going to find that other porcelain doll? I, of course, couldn't jump in like my sister. After waiting a while and hearing no activity, I prepared to head home. But just as I turned around, I suddenly discovered several drunken men standing behind me, looking at me with lewd expressions. "Little beauty, do you want a man in the middle of the night?" "Tonight, we brothers will give you a good time." I repeatedly backed away, but their hands were already reaching out towards me. I dared not imagine what fate awaited me if I fell into their hands tonight. Taking advantage of their swaying figures, I seized the opportunity to run. The men chased closely behind me, cursing incessantly, but I had been frail since childhood. How could I escape these strong men? I suddenly remembered that beside the small path behind the mountains was a forest, a good place to hide. I ran towards it with all my might. Carelessly, a stone beneath my foot caused me to trip and fall to the ground. I clutched my sprained ankle, watching the men behind me draw closer and closer, my heart filled with despair. Just then, a pair of hands suddenly appeared before me, firmly pulling my arm up and hoisting me onto a back. "Is that Aunt Clara? What are you doing running out in the middle of the night, child? Don't you know those old men want to devour you like a swan every day?" Aunt Clara, breathless, carried me towards the forest. I had been accustomed to concealing my emotions for years, but at this moment, tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. "Aunt Clara, thank you. If you hadn't come today, The men behind us were still giving chase. Aunt Clara carried me straight into the forest. I jumped off her back, limping to find a place to hide. Thin mist rose in the night forest. I dragged my injured leg, going deeper inside. "Shh, be quiet, those men are still behind us." Listening to Aunt Clara, I stepped softly. With the trees and mist as cover, they wouldn't easily spot me. I heard, "Little beauty, still playing hide-and-seek with us? Come out now." This forest has such heavy yin energy. How can it be as comfortable as in Uncle's arms? The sounds grew closer, urging me to find an escape route. As I passed through several ancient trees, I saw an empty coffin on the ground. "Whose coffin is this left here?" I looked at Aunt Clara with a puzzled expression. She was also startled, but the immediate situation was urgent, allowing no time for deep thought. Aunt Clara looked behind us, saying to me in a very quick voice, "Quickly, hide in there, I'll distract them." I had never been superstitious about such things since childhood, so I quickly climbed into the empty coffin, and together with Aunt Clara, we closed the lid from the inside. "I'll come call you when they've gone," she said. After this, Aunt Clara's footsteps gradually faded away. I held my breath, hiding inside. Not long after, the men came closer. "Damn it, where did that slut go?" At this moment, a man's terrified voice rang out. "Brother, look, isn't that a coffin? Damn it, who's playing this trick? Leaving a coffin here. Let's go, strange things have been happening in the village recently. Let's stay away from these things." With that, their footsteps headed off into the distance. I clutched my chest, full of fear. This time, we're safe. I didn't know where Aunt Clara had run off to, but I dared not be careless, silently lying in the coffin, waiting for her to come back for me. After a long wait, I heard the soft footsteps of a woman. I couldn't help but whisper, "Aunt Clara, they're gone. Please help me push open the coffin lid." But the person outside seemed not to hear, showing no reaction to me. I reached out to push open the wooden board above my head, only to find that something heavy was pressing down on it. "Aunt Clara, is that you? Is something pressing on it? I can't push it open." This time, my reply was the heavy sound of a hammer striking nails. I panicked, banging on the coffin, shouting loudly, "Aunt Clara, what are you doing? Let me out." Outside the coffin, the familiar voice finally echoed. "Originally, I wanted to wait for you to escape the village yourself before I sealed you in here. Who knew even heaven would help me?" Aunt Clara's voice was filled with a hint of excitement now. As she forcefully hammered the nails, she mumbled, "How could those men in the village be worthy of a beautiful face like yours? Only my son has that right." I couldn't believe these words were coming from Aunt Clara's mouth. I just kept pounding on the coffin lid, screaming, "Your son died long ago. What good is doing all this now?" Hearing me say that, the hammer in her hand fell even faster. My son was the best child in this world. Even if he's dead, I must marry him to the most beautiful wife. Marrying you to my son is better than letting you be cheapened by those men. With each iron nail driven in, I couldn't push the coffin lid open another inch. Aunt Clara sat outside the coffin, crying for a very long time. "Rest assured, down there, you'll be company for my son. In a few days, I'll come and bury both of you together." After she said that, there was no sound around anymore. Only I remained, helpless, lying in the coffin, my fingernails dug deep into the wooden planks. In this village, one should never harbor any hope in human hearts. When I appeared at home the next day, my mother, as usual, dragged me into the secret chamber to reglaze me. This time, the stream of holy light passing through my body was even more exquisite. My mother, breaking tradition, dressed me in the most beautiful gown in the house. It wasn't until she led me to the village altar that I understood her intentions behind these actions. Our village hasn't been peaceful recently, but for everyone to have a good life, today I want to announce two things. My mother looked at the crowd below the altar, her voice tinged with excitement. "The first thing is that tomorrow, I will be here to perform a blessing ceremony for the village using my secret art, so it may be protected by the heavens." She took my hand and continued, The second thing is that my daughter will come of age tomorrow. She is a unique living porcelain doll. Those who wish to purchase her first night, please await tomorrow's auction." As soon as these words were uttered, the men below the altar cheered and applauded. Each of them stared at my body with fiery eyes, wishing they could push me down the very next second. Only one person was an exception, Aunt Clara, hiding in the crowd. She looked at me with horror, seemingly unable to believe I was alive and standing there. I stepped down from the platform, hooked my arm through Aunt Clara's, and smiled at her, whispering, "My kind mother-in-law, your son told me to come back and keep you company." The villagers now completely believed my mother's words. On the same day, they successively moved the porcelain dolls drying at their homes to beneath the altar. My mother, meanwhile, was busy cleaning our house all night. Early the next morning, everyone in the village gathered, waiting for the auction. My mother held a heavy bundle, placing it beside her. She pushed me to the center of the altar, declaring the auction open. Below the platform, several men couldn't contain themselves. They immediately started shouting high bids. At this moment, someone yelled, "Where's old Mr. Ngo?" He was shouting every day that he wanted to buy the porcelain doll's first night. How much is he bidding? Everyone looked around but couldn't find any trace of him. Normally, old Mr. Ngo always finds opportunities to harass me, but today he's not here. Go quickly and call him. That old man probably overslept again. Everyone's eyes focused on me. I followed my mother's requests, striking various graceful poses. Look at this skin. I've nurtured it to be even whiter than pearls. There is only one living porcelain doll, let alone her first night. Even this small hand has never been held by a man. Her first night is the auspicious opening of a living porcelain doll's fortune. Not everyone can enjoy such good luck. The men's bids grew more frantic, their eyes red like wild beasts. The auction only gradually settled down when Uncle Frank took out the money he had saved in his coffin. He excitedly raised the money, shouting, "I've waited for so many years. Finally, I'll get a taste." Just then, the person who went to call Mr. Ngo returned. He was crawling and running, yelling, "Dead. Someone's dead. Old Mr. Ngo is dead." Everyone was drawn by his scream. "What are you saying? Old Mr. Ngo was healthy yesterday. How could he be dead?" The man said agitatedly, his face filled with terror. "Why would I lie to you? I just entered his courtyard and saw him lying on the ground. You wouldn't believe it." Old Mr. Ngo's entire body was riddled with blood holes, even his eye sockets had been gouged out. When I arrived, there were insects crawling all over the corpse. As he spoke, he trembled all over. "There's no one left alive in his house, they're all dead." The villagers heard this horrific scene, their legs and arms turning to jelly with fear. "How can this be? Did our village truly anger the heavens?" The person next to him interrupted impatiently. "Who said that? We haven't done anything against our conscience." Just then, faint baby laughter echoed from afar. The villagers searched everywhere for the source of the laughter. The ethereal figure of Mrs. Ngo's porcelain doll suddenly appeared before everyone. The baby had flesh and blood, and her body was incredibly nimble. At the same time, the porcelain dolls placed on the ground began to writhe. Their hardened bodies gradually moved, stretched out, and eerie smiles hung on their faces. The villagers were surrounded by the porcelain dolls. They looked towards my mother, their eyes filled with fear, begging for help. Who knew my mother would pick up her money-filled bundle, intending to flee? Unfortunately, it was too late. Two figures blocked her path. One was me, and the other was my elder sister. A fierce wind howled through the village, golden sand swirling up from the ground. The sky and earth no longer saw the sun. Thunder roared overhead, and the ground itself seemed to tremble. My mother saw my sister, her eyes revealing undeniable guilt. My sister had temporarily regained flesh and blood, transforming into the figure of a young woman. But the lingering carved patterns all over her body recorded the cruel punishments she had endured that year. My mother felt the resentment emanating from my sister's entire being. She covered her face, crying and saying, "You can't blame me for this. That year, we were truly too poor to survive. If I had starved to death, wouldn't you have died too?" My sister, with a cold expression, pulled my hand and shouted at my mother, "Then what about her? How much money did you get for selling me? And because of your greed for money, you tortured our sister into this state. A person like you doesn't deserve to be a mother. Today, we will settle scores with you." With that, dozens of silver knives rose beside my sister, instantly darting towards the woman opposite. My mother's body was cut in countless places by the silver knives, gushing blood. She screamed terribly, pulled the red bead necklace from her bundle, and threw it at my sister. The red bead necklace erupted with an eerie glow in the golden sand, immediately forming a bloody barrier that blocked us. My mother, clutching her wounds, laughed coldly at us. "Do you really think your mother is an easy target? You two may talk big, but I gave birth to you. You're still too naive." My sister was about to break through the barrier when I stopped her. My mother shrieked triumphantly from the other side. "Why don't you let her through? I'll tell you too, this blood bead necklace specializes in subduing porcelain dolls. Touch it, and you'll turn into dust." I looked at her arrogant demeanor, slowly bringing my finger closer to the barrier. "Really? Did the secret art passed down to you not tell you that this blood bead necklace has no effect on living porcelain dolls?" My mother watched as my entire body passed through the barrier, stunned, speechless. I walked to her side, bowed, and whispered, "Not only were you all waiting for me to grow up, I too have been waiting for a very long time." My mother only knew that I was different from other porcelain dolls, a rare living one. But she didn't know that a person who could survive and grow to 18 years old would become the Queen of porcelain dolls. Therefore, I had also waited a very long time for this day of my coming of age. Before maturing, my spiritual power was too weak. I could only secretly summon the spirits of those other porcelain dolls in the darkness. Even when Aunt Clara trapped me in the coffin, I couldn't save myself. Fortunately, my sister arrived in time that day, helping me see the sunlight again. But the current me, now mature, how could I fear my mother's deceptive tricks? At my command, Mrs. Ngo's porcelain doll raised the iron hammer and struck my mother. The porcelain dolls beneath the altar, as if guided, erupted in piercing screams. They poured all their resentment onto their parents, the very ones who had personally carved their bones and peeled their skin. The sound of shattering bones filled the air. The villagers watched helplessly as their entire skeletons were crushed, their flesh and skin slowly turning into porcelain shards. They screamed in terror, but could not resist. The porcelain dolls absorbed every shard of porcelain their parents had become. Vibrant, fresh young women once again appeared on this land. When my sister, holding Mrs. Ngo's plump, white porcelain doll, stood beside me, her body was several times more nimble. The carved patterns on her skin were also gone. The wicked woman who had harmed all the infant girls had vanished from this world, but it wasn't over yet. One person still hadn't appeared. "Sister, I've searched all over the village, but I can't find that woman anywhere." Aunt Clara must have heard the commotion. She likely escaped. But I know where she is now. I handed Mrs. Ngo's porcelain doll to one of the slightly older porcelain dolls. I led my sister straight behind the mountains, walking until we reached the village graveyard. A lonely woman sat before a small tombstone, sobbing uncontrollably. She could abandon everything, but she could not abandon her son. Seeing me, Aunt Clara was not as terrified as I had imagined. She seemed to have known I would come. Aunt Clara picked up the bottle of wine beside her, took a swig, and spoke to herself. "I always thought I was different from those inhuman people in the village, but now that I think about it, there's no difference. There were times I truly wanted to let you go, but my son's voice always echoed in my ears. He said he was lonely by himself in the afterlife. He wanted company. He said." Aunt Clara leaned against the tombstone. Her voice grew softer and softer until it faded into silence. My sister looked at her, saying with hatred, "Stop making excuses. Harming others is harming yourself. Where do all these reasons come from?" The more she spoke, the angrier she became, unable to resist rushing forward for revenge. I gently pulled my sister's arm back. "No need, she's already dead." My sister's eyes widened. She walked over and pushed Aunt Clara. Indeed, the body no longer breathed, the wine was poisoned. I turned around and said calmly, "She also got her wish. Finally, she can go keep her son company." After that day, the surrounding villages gradually started calling ours the Village of Maidens. Every morning, one could see the busy figures of young women and a group of adorable little girls chirping and playing by the riverside. Mrs. Ngo's baby also grew a little, plump and carved like jade, looking incredibly lovely. Everyone said the Village of Maidens was best at making porcelain ware. Everyone possessed superb craftsmanship. Many people flocked from other places just to buy the latest designs. All these techniques I learned from my mother's secret art book. Whether it was carving patterns or glazing methods, if used in a different way, they would yield different results. If my mother had thought of this back then, she surely could have had a better life. A single mistaken thought, 1,000 miles of difference. "Sister, don't sit there any longer. It's cold outside. Come in and eat." Smelling the food, my stomach began to rumble. "Sister, I'm coming." the porcelain dolls truly can live again. As long as no one attacks us, we will not harm anyone.